To understand the present, the story reaches back to one of the darkest chapters in church history, the Inquisition. Public celebrations, or autos da fe, were not festive gatherings but ritualized trials and condemnations. Accused heretics stood before huge crowds, surrounded by religious symbols and royal authority. Their sentences were read publicly. Some were imprisoned, others handed over to be burned, while the ceremony itself was framed as a victory of Christ over Satan. Those events contained a principle: worship, law, and punishment were woven together. Ceremony legitimized power. Doctrine justified violence. That when modern churches adopt the forms and language of systems that once used liturgy to crush conscience, they risk adopting the same instinct for control, different in method but similar in spirit. Jesuit strategy: how to unite churches without a reformation. Ecumenical theorists, including Catholic and World Council of Churches voices, describe a model where churches remain outwardly distinct, keeping their names, buildings, and some unique emphases, yet are joined in a deeper communion. Diversity is tolerated, even celebrated, as long as there is agreement on core authority structures and shared commitments. Jesuit writers especially have emphasized several points. Unity must be visible and structural, not merely spiritual. Church leaders, not individual believers, are the primary actors in this process. Authority flows from the top down, ultimately converging on the papacy as the guarantor of orthodoxy. In this scheme, Protestant emphases on individual conscience and the right to test all things by Scripture are quietly marginalized. The community, and particularly its leadership, becomes the final arbiter of truth and behavior. The outward forms of Protestantism remain, but the inner logic begins to shift toward Roman-style control. Two legal worlds, canon law and common law. To grasp how deep this shift can go, we need to compare two very different legal traditions, canon law and common law. Canon law is the internal legal system of the Catholic Church, a body of rules, decrees, and regulations created by church authorities to govern members and institutions. It is highly codified, centrally controlled, and rooted in a vision of law as the ordinance of a competent authority for the common good of the community. Common law, by contrast, is the historic legal tradition that developed in England and influenced the United States and other Protestant heritage nations. It is characterized by public trials, rights of the accused, the role of juries, a strong respect for precedent and local custom, protections like habeas corpus and due process, designed to shield the individual from arbitrary power. Canon law tends to concentrate power in the hands of ecclesiastical authorities. Common law, at its best, distributes power, balancing church, state, and individual rights. How canon law operates. In practice, classical canon law allows for secret proceedings. Investigations and trials can be conducted out of public view, with limited or no transparency. Inquisitorial procedure. The same authority that accuses can also investigate and judge, blurring the lines between prosecution and adjudication. Emphasis on obedience. The central question is often whether a person is loyal to the Church's authority and teaching, rather than whether they have violated clear, publicly known laws. This system was historically used to discipline clergy, suppress heresy, and maintain doctrinal and institutional unity. It is not built around the modern idea of the individual standing before the law as an equal with rights guaranteed by a neutral constitution. Common law, a Protestant shield. Common law emerged in a very different environment. Over centuries, it became a framework for limiting kings, bishops, and governments. Its features include open courts, where evidence is presented publicly, the right to counsel, and the opportunity to confront accusers, appeals and review by independent judges, the principle that laws should be known, stable, and applied equally. This legal culture helped protect the Reformation and later dissenters. It allowed religious minorities, including early Adventists, to preach unpopular messages without fear of secret trials and arbitrary punishment, at least in theory. It reflects a worldview where individual conscience matters and where power must justify itself, not simply demand obedience. When a Protestant church thinks in canon law, it's claimed that the Adventist Church, in its handling of perceived dissent and independent ministries, has increasingly mirrored canon law rather than common law. Patterns allegedly include quiet investigations and dossiers compiled without the members' knowledge, leadership-driven processes where the accuser, investigator, and judge are effectively the same circle of officials, disfellowshipping or credential removal decided behind closed doors, with little or no opportunity for the accused to present a defense before the broader body, appeals routed through the very structures that initiated the action, leaving little hope for independent review. To the average member, decisions are later presented as duly considered and necessary for unity. But from the inside, the process feels less like Matthew 18 and more like an ecclesiastical court, where the outcome is shaped by institutional priorities rather than open searching for truth. This is the legal face of ecumenism, a church that still speaks Protestant language but handles conflict with Roman methods. Propaganda and rumor as tools of spiritual warfare. Law is only one tool. Another is narrative control, what people believe about those who dissent. Modern military and political institutions openly study psychological operations and rumor management, how to plant ideas, shape perceptions, and discredit opponents without open confrontation. Courses and manuals describe how to build trust, then quietly introduce doubt about a target's motives or sanity until the public no longer takes them seriously. This draws a direct connection. These same methodologies appear when independent Adventist ministries are targeted. Whisper campaigns, selective leaks, and carefully crafted statements by leaders create an atmosphere in which certain individuals or groups are seen as dangerous, unstable, or off. Long before a formal action is taken, the verdict has already been rendered in the court of public opinion. Combined with canon law-style procedures, this rumor-based warfare ensures that when discipline finally falls, many members will assume it is justified, even if they never heard the actual evidence, and even if the accused never had a fair hearing. The ecumenical trap, what cannot be rejected. One of the most sobering points in the exposé is the Jesuit insight that in ecumenical negotiations, nothing that decisively contradicts core Catholic dogma can ultimately be denied. This means Sunday sacredness, papal primacy, the Eucharist, and the sacramental system stand as non-negotiable pillars. Partner churches may nuance or downplay their own distinctives, but they cannot expect Rome to abandon its central doctrines. When Protestant bodies agree to broad ecumenical platforms, they are entering a conversation where the outer details may shift, but the center is fixed. Over time, the pressure is always toward acceptance, or at least tolerance, of the papal system and its core practices. In that environment, a movement built around the three angels' messages, including a warning against the mark of the beast and a call out of Babylon, will seem increasingly out of step, even offensive. If such a movement's own leadership is entangled in ecumenical structures, the simplest solution is not a public break with Rome, it is to silence or sideline their own prophetic voice. From theology to New World Order, the political edge, the legal and ecclesiastical shifts do not happen in a vacuum. As global politics move toward tighter integration and New World Order language, the Vatican's role as a moral and spiritual advisor to nations grows. The Pope is welcomed in parliaments and congresses, speaking not only about faith, but about economics, climate, migration, and global governance. In that context, a church that aligns its internal discipline with canon law patterns and its public stance with ecumenical consensus is better positioned to be seen as a responsible partner in international discussions. But this comes at a price. Prophetic independence is sacrificed. Warnings about Babylon, beast powers, and compromised religion become embarrassing, even dangerous in a world that prizes consensus and labels sharp dissent as hatred or extremism. It is suggested that as international agreements and global norms harden, Those who insist on proclaiming the full three angels' messages will increasingly be painted as obstacles to peace, enemies of unity, or even more ominously, haters of the human race.